Okay, so we're diving into the Nativity story.
Oh,
And, it's one of those that everyone thinks they know, right?
right.
But you sent over some fascinating sources for this deep dive.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of ready to go beyond just the manger scene with you on this one. Like, what's the history behind it? The real history.
Yeah.
What's the symbolism we might be missing? I feel like there are always layers with this stuff.
Yeah.
Are there even some surprises tucked in there?
Absolutely. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me.
Mhm.
This story, it's so central to Christian faith, obviously.
Right.
But it also has these echoes throughout history, and not just in, like, a religious context, like, even from a completely secular perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot there that I think anyone can find, honestly, kind of rich and interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of history, I think that the setting itself is kind of key here.
It is.
Because it wasn't some idyllic countryside,
Right.
We're talking about Judea under Roman rule, which, like, that's a whole thing. Can you kind of set the stage for us a little bit there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got to imagine, like, at the time, there was so much political tension, right?
Right.
And on top of that, you've got the Jewish people, and they're longing for a Messiah.
Right.
But they're expecting, like, a warrior king, someone to overthrow their oppressors.
Right, not like a baby in a manger.
Not a baby born in a stable. No, not at all.
Yeah, like, it's almost ironic. You have this tiny, seemingly insignificant life
Yeah.
that ends up, like, changing the course of history.
Yeah.
And not through armies or might or anything like that, but
Right.
just by, like, existing.
Yeah, just by being born, really.
Wow.
And I think that unexpectedness,
Yeah.
that's a big part of why this story still resonates with people, even like millennia later.
Right.
It challenges, like, power structures.
Yeah.
It makes us question, our assumptions about where significance is actually found.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of assumptions, can we talk about Mary for a second?
Okay. Yeah.
Because even just picturing that scene, like an angel appearing and saying she's the one to give birth to the Son of God. Whoa.
I know. It's
Like,
a lot.
what would your reaction be, honestly?
It's easy to just gloss over that.
Yeah.
But, like, her courage and her faith to, like, say yes to that.
Yeah.
To a destiny like that. That's honestly extraordinary.
It is.
And, it wasn't an easy path for her. Not even from the start, really.
No kidding. And then you've got Joseph.
Yeah.
He often gets kind of sidelined in the story.
He does.
But his role was huge here.
Oh, definitely.
And probably really, really tough back then, like socially.
Absolutely.
Talk about social pressure.
Imagine the whispers, the doubt that he must have faced from people. And, he could have walked away easily.
Right.
But he doesn't.
Yeah.
Instead, he chooses to become Jesus's protector, and not just a protector, but his father too, in the eyes of society, at least.
Right.
Like, that's defying social norms.
Totally.
And he was risking his own reputation to do it too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've got this young couple. They're pregnant under, shall we say, unusual circumstances.
Right.
And then they have to travel for the census that Caesar Augustus is, like, mandating 9 months pregnant on donkey back. No, thank you.
Oh, I know, right. It really puts the journey in a whole new light, I think. It's so easy to picture, like, these pristine nativity scenes that we always see.
Right.
But the reality is there was real struggle there.
Yeah.
Like, very human struggles
Yeah.
happening all around. This, supposedly divine birth.
Totally. And it gets even more real when they arrive in Bethlehem. Like,
Yeah.
they get there exhausted, and the only thing they find is no vacancy.
Right, which is how they end up in the stable.
And the stable.
Think about it. The birthplace of the person who, like, Christians believe is the King of Kings.
I know.
It's a place for animals.
Yeah.
Like, the humility there is on a whole other level.
It's true.
It really is.
Like, it's the complete opposite of what you'd expect from a king.
Yeah.
And yet, it kind of fits.
It does. You're right. It does.
Yes.
Because it disrupts our expectations, I think.
Yeah.
It suggests that, true greatness.
Yeah.
True greatness isn't found in these palaces, but in something way more profound,
Right.
like something deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And this theme of the unexpected, right? It just keeps popping up.
Oh, guess so.
Because, like, who's the first audience for this, like, monumental birth?
Yeah.
It's not kings.
Right.
It's not priests.
No.
It's shepherds.
It's shepherds.
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 Of all people.
Right. And shepherds at the time, they were often overlooked. They were seen as kind of rough around the edges, definitely on the margins of society.
Right.
And yet they're the ones deemed worthy of this, like, angelic announcement.
Totally.
It really flips the script on who has access to the divine. You know what I mean?
Totally. Like, it's almost radical when you think about it.
Yeah.
This idea that God's message, this hope,
Yeah.
it wasn't just for the elite.
Right.
It's for everyone.
Yeah. And it raises a good question, I think. If God chose to reveal, like, this monumental event first to the shepherds, then what ordinary people in our lives, today might be carrying messages that we've overlooked?
Ooh.
Okay.
That's a good one to sit with.
Right?
But we're not done with the unexpected visitors just yet, are we?
No, we're not.
Because we also have the Magi, these mysterious figures traveling from the east, following a star.
A star, yeah.
Talk about a serious pilgrimage.
It really was. I mean, think about, like, the distance they must have traveled. And it wasn't a simple journey back then either.
Oh, no, not at all.
And let's talk about the gifts for a second. Because these gifts they bring, they weren't just random trinkets.
Right.
Like, they each had meaning: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Each one of those held, like, a deep symbolic meaning. And honestly, they foreshadowed Jesus's life too.
Okay, so unpack that for me a little bit. I'll admit, sometimes I need a little help when it comes to symbolism.
Yeah, no problem.
Like, what's the deeper meaning there?
Okay, so let's start with gold.
Okay.
Gold is the traditional gift for a king, right? Like, that's pretty standard. And in this context, it's acknowledging Jesus' rightful place as, like, King of the Jews.
Right.
But it's more than just a political title too, right? It implies a kingdom that's not of this world,
Okay. I'm intrigued. What about frankincense?
Frankincense. So frankincense was used in temple rituals.
Okay.
Specifically offerings to God.
Okay.
So it points towards Jesus' divine nature, his role as the Son of God.
Right.
And then there's myrrh.
Myrrh. Okay. Which, if I remember correctly, was used for burial.
It was.
That's a bit ominous, even for a deep dive, don't you think?
It is. It is. And it speaks to, like, this duality of Jesus's birth, because yes, it is a moment of joy and celebration.
Right.
But it also, it foreshadows the sacrifice.
Yeah.
That he will eventually make.
Wow.
Yeah.
So even those gifts, like, presented with such reverence, they had this whole hidden layer of, like, prophecy in them.
They did.
Talk about dramatic irony.
Right. It's like from the very beginning, Jesus's life was ordained. His path was, like, laid out, even as he took his first breaths in that humble stable.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
It is.
And speaking of powerful figures, remember King Herod?
Oh, yeah.
His reaction to this whole newborn king thing.
Yeah.
Let's just say he wasn't exactly welcoming.
Yeah, talk about a buzzkill. You'd think a king would be at least a little curious about this whole newborn king thing, right?
Right.
But not exactly a warm welcome.
No, not at all. Like so many rulers throughout history, Herod was driven by fear, and that desire to maintain power. A king of the Jews being born in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a direct threat to his throne.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's what leads to the massacre of the innocents, right?
Oh.
That always struck me as, like, such a dark turn in the story, especially this time of year.
It is a stark reminder that the story of Jesus, even from his birth, isn't all, sweetness and light.
Yeah.
There's this powerful undercurrent there of, political intrigue, violence, opposition. Herod's actions, as horrific as they were calculated to eliminate any rivals to his power.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine the fear that Mary and Joseph must have felt, knowing that this tyrant was threatened by their child.
Absolutely. And yet,
Absolutely.
even amidst that danger, there's also this sense of divine protection too.
Right.
Like the angel appearing to Joseph in a dream, warning him to flee to Egypt. It adds this element of, like, suspense to the story.
Totally.
Like this higher power is orchestrating events behind the scenes.
It's like a thriller, but with a deeper meaning.
Exactly. It reminds us that, the Christmas story, it's not just a feel-good holiday tale.
Right.
It's a narrative about faith, courage, and the very real dangers faced by those who dare to, challenge the status quo.
Absolutely. Speaking of deeper meaning, can we dive into the symbolism a bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I feel like there's so much to unpack here beyond just, like, the surface level.
Absolutely. For example, the contrast between Jesus' humble birth and his divine origin, born in a stable, yet declared the Son of God.
Right.
It makes you think,
It really does.
Why would God choose
to
enter the world in such a seemingly insignificant way.
Right. Yeah, it's like it makes you wonder, like, if God's not in like the grandeur, then where is he?
Right. I think it speaks to the idea that God's power isn't found in like grandeur or opulence,
Right.
but in humility and vulnerability. This theme of like subverting expectations, of finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Right.
Like that's central to the entire Christian message.
It makes you see those like traditional nativity elements in a whole new light. Like the manger, the stable. Those aren't just random backdrops, are they?
Not at all. The manger, a feeding trough for animals, becomes a cradle for the one who Christians believe will nourish our souls.
Wow.
The stable,
Yeah.
a place of shelter for livestock. It becomes a sanctuary for the Son of God. It's about finding holiness in unexpected places.
It's about recognizing that God can meet us anywhere, no matter our circumstances.
Exactly. And remember those gifts that the Magi brought?
Yeah.
Gold, frankincense, myrrh. They weren't just random presents,
Right.
They were symbolic offerings.
Right.
Each one pointed to a different aspect of Jesus's identity and destiny.
I'm still kind of stuck on the myrrh, to be honest. It seems so out of place, especially for a newborn baby.
It does, and yet it speaks volumes. Gold for a king, frankincense for a deity, but myrrh, that was used for, anointing the dead.
Right.
It foreshadows the sacrifice that Jesus will eventually make for humanity.
It's interesting because, like, at the time, no one would have known the true significance of that gift.
Exactly. It's like this layer of dramatic irony, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that even as a baby, Jesus's fate was already, like, sealed.
Wow.
But it also invites us to consider what seemingly insignificant details in our own lives might hold a deeper meaning. What seemingly ordinary event might be shaping our destiny.
Wow, that's a powerful thought.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like those gifts were a message not just for them at the manger, but for all of us, like across time.
And that's the beauty of the story, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's timeless. It speaks to something profound within the human experience.
It makes you wonder what else we might be missing, just beneath the surface of this, like, familiar tale.
Well, perhaps that's the invitation of any deep dive, isn't it?
Yeah.
To look closer, to question our assumptions, and to discover new layers of meaning, even in the most well-known stories.
Okay, so we've got all these layers.
We do.
The history, the symbolism, even, like, political intrigue. But, like, how does it all connect back to us, like living in the 21st century? What are we actually supposed to take away from this story? Beyond the like manger scenes and the Christmas carols and all that.
I think that's the heart of it, really. Because this story isn't, just about a historical event.
Right.
It's about finding hope and meaning in places you wouldn't expect.
Okay.
Like the shepherds, We're invited to look beyond just the surface, to see the extraordinary in the seemingly ordinary.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a time I was going through a really tough period, and I was feeling, honestly, pretty lost.
Yeah.
Like hopeless,
Yeah.
And this tiny thing happened. It was like a random act of kindness from a complete stranger.
Wow.
And it totally shifted my perspective, It reminded me that even when things are dark,
Yeah.
there's still good in the world.
It's amazing how those small moments can have such a big impact.
I know, right?
And isn't that what this story is about? God's love breaking into the world in the most unexpected way.
Yeah.
Through a baby in a stable,
It's like this reminder that hope can be found in the most unexpected places.
It really is.
If we just open ourselves up to it,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not like a passive hope
Yeah.
either. Like, look at Mary. Her courage to say yes to this calling, this destiny,
Yeah.
even though she had no idea what the future held.
Right.
Look at Joseph. His willingness to protect his family,
Yeah.
even when it meant, uprooting their lives,
No.
fleeing to a foreign land.
It's about having the faith to take that first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase,
It really is. And while, for Christians, the birth of Jesus,
Yeah.
it's the beginning of God's plan for humanity's salvation,
Right.
but its message, its message of hope, of love, of sacrifice, that holds meaning for a lot of people, even outside of a religious context.
Yeah. I mean, it's a universal story in a lot of ways, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's about the power of faith. It's about the importance of love and compassion and how, honestly, like, just the impact that one life can have on the world.
It really is. And ultimately, I think that's what we're left with, a story that continues to challenge us, and to inspire us. to, like you said,
Yeah.
to look beyond just the surface and find that deeper meaning in our own lives.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, we'll leave you with this. Like, what is it about the Nativity story that resonates most strongly with you? What are you going to carry with you from this conversation? Because this isn't just a story to, like, pull out once a year, right? It's an invitation, I think, to see the world and, honestly, to see ourselves with fresh eyes.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.